This is the Comics Alternative Kickstarter, Discovering the Secret Voice, Volume 1. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative Kickstarter. This is the weekly series where I talk with a comics-related creator on Kickstarter or creative team who has a project going on currently. And this week I have the pleasure of talking with Zack Sot0. His Kickstarter project is The Secret Voice Volume 1. Zack, welcome to the show.
Hey, Derek. Thanks for having me.
I think you and I first met at SPX a couple of years ago, and I talked with you briefly for one of our on-location episodes that are recorded there.
That is correct.
Yes. And even before that time, I was familiar with The Secret Voice, both its, I guess, webcomics version and also the print versions that you had been putting out. Now, with this Kickstarter, you're collecting the first few issues and additional material in one nice volume. So I'm wondering if you can introduce The Secret Voice to our listeners.
Yeah. So The Secret Voice is it is an epic fantasy comic, as I like to call it. I actually like to call it a psychedelic fantasy epic, I guess, because it has sort of a non-conventional, or at least non-conventional elements to it. That it kind of takes it out of the more traditional Lord of the Rings kind of territory. It's a series that I've been working on for 10 years or so, off and on, and life has a way of getting in the way with some of these things that you do in the margins. But I have been dedicating the last several years way heavy into just doing Secret Voice, and so yeah, I've got 3 issues out, and honestly, as you know, things sort of things can change with the market and whatever. So honestly, at this point, I'm just not. It doesn't make sense for me to do issues, and I want to get the book out, and I want to get the whole story out, and the whole story is going to be about 3 volumes right now. It's this is the first volume, which is going to be those 3 issues plus what would have been a 4th issue.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about the evolution of The Secret Voice. I guess first and foremost, where did this idea come from?
The very first thing I ever did with this, so the main character is Dr. Galapagos. He's sort of a mystery man. He's got like these goggles on and bandages on his face, and really like he started from an image, as many of these things do. I was in school, I was in college at the time, and I did a print with just this guy who was, and it's a very different kind of looking thing. It was way more, way simpler. It was like an etching that I was working on, and I did this, bandaged guy with goggles, and he was holding up a hand. And honestly, that is where everything started.
From that one image?
Yeah, from that one image. So, at that point, I was like, oh, this guy's name's Dr. Galapagos. It was all pretty stream of consciousness, which is sort of like where a lot of my base, like the building blocks for things can come from. But then as I tend to do, I started building these different ideas about who he was, who he could be, and then I was like, oh, let me do a comic. And that was over 10 years ago, as I said, and I did a little mini comic, and it was just probably 5 or 6 pages, and which turned out to be the very first 5 pages of sort of the first draft of The Secret Voice, which was in black and white, and there was an issue from Ad House a long time ago. But yeah, so anyway, so Dr. Galapagos is all born out of this one print.
So the first incarnation of The Secret Voice was actually the minicomic?
Correct. Yeah, there was I had a mini comic called The Secret Voice, but it was just it was just random things that I was doing, I don't know, the evolution of being a cartoonist and coming up with these things and sort of building your worlds and these different things. Like Secret Voice was a name that was sort of a grab bag title originally, and then as I came up with Dr. Galapagos and everything, there is an actual secret voice, quote unquote, in the story with Dr. Galapagos. So he sort of took on the title of the Secret Voice.
And then you turned the Secret Voice into a webcomic.
Correct. Yes. And the webcomic was mainly meant to drive me to have a deadline. So that I started that like 5 or 6 years ago. And so all that time, like it's just been pushing me to have a deadline to actually produce pages, and to get like sort of a weekly drip of productivity going. Although there have been gaps in between issues, as far as like, because I'm trying to do other projects and stuff as well. But yeah, so the webcomic on studygroupcomics.com has been, like all 3 of the issues are up online as far as the Dr. Galapagos stuff.
And then you had come out with, I guess, the first 3 issues in hard copy from the webcomic.
Correct, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and so I was doing these issues in sort of golden age format, I like to call it, because it's a slightly oversized comics with like sort of nicer covers, but then the inside were like all newsprint and full color, because I was using a newspaper printer, so they were pretty cheap to make, but I could make like a nice product. So from minicomic to webcomic to full color floppy comic, and now to a handsome edition for your shelf.
Yeah. I think my first introduction to the Secret Voice was the webcomic. And in fact, I think it was July of 2015. My co-host of the webcomics monthly series at the time, Andy Wolverton, and I discussed the Secret Voice along with a couple of other webcomics from Study Group Titan, and then Black is the Color. So we have covered Secret Voice in the past.
I do remember that. I appreciate that.
Yes. Now, so this new book is going to include those first 3 issues, and you say what would have been in print a 4th issue?
Correct. Well, it's essentially that. The cool thing about every stage from web to print has been the ability to sort of revise and sort of reassess the material as you go along, because the way I looked at doing the webcomic was always just sort of like a draft, I said, okay, to myself, okay, I need to get this done. Because I have a sort of a tendency to dither, I have a tendency to sort of like, let me fiddle with this. Let me, this will never be perfect, and if I held to that and worried about that for too long, then I would never get anything done. So I looked at the webcomic as, in a sense, as a sort of a draft, in the same way that a mini comic used to be the way, like, you would see all your flaws and whatnot as soon as the mini comic was printed. So maybe if it was going to get recollected, you could revise things. So from the webcomic to the print comic, I did some revisions or whatnot. And now I color corrected the first issue to sort of line up with the second and third and what would be the 4th issues. But now there's also some kind of funny stuff where the new stuff is actually it's an insert into like the last several pages of what was issue 3. So I've expanded the 3rd issue, if you want to think about it that way. But yeah, it's basically a 4th issue.
So readers who may already be familiar with The Secret Voice, especially if they're process junkies, should definitely get this book that you're currently kickstarting, because then they can see the evolution of the project, right? From, mini comic to web comic to print copies of individual issues to this upcoming first volume.
Yeah, I like to think that they should.
Well, let's talk about some of the ways that people can get the book, or at least back your project in one form or another. Tell me about the various reward levels that you have.
Okay, yeah. So I have like some cool titles for all of them. So I'll definitely be making some silly noises come out of my mouth. So yeah, the first tier, aside from just the hey, feel free to just give me money for $2 or whatever. There's the Cyber World, which is allows you to get a PDF, a nice high quality DRM free PDF delivered straight to your email door. And then there's the Sigil. I have some swag basically. I have the patch. For are we? Should I say how much? I don't know.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well. Yeah. So actually, I won't. Never mind. That's too much in the weeds. Anyway, there's the patch. It's got a cool troll head. So there's these trolls in the first part of the book that Dr. Galapagos fights, and they kind of show up a lot in the iconography of the branding of the book and whatever. So there's this exploding sort of troll head patch. I've got a pin, an enamel pin that's exclusive to the Kickstarter. I might do like another colorway later, but this will be the only version in sort of a gold severed troll hand pin. There's the book itself for $25. You get the book and a copy of the PDF delivered to you. And there's also, so like if you're like, yeah, that book sounds cool, but I would like to make it a little more special. There's some signed, numbered book plates that are going to be in another edition called the Specialist. If you want to get 2 books, you can do that. I have a tier for that. And then there's one where you get the book plus a brand new print made specially for this. It'll only be available with the Kickstarter, and with that one, it's $50. So you get the book, you get a print, and that I throw in the patch on that one as well. I have some retailer tiers. So you can I have 2 different retailer tiers. One where you can get 5 copies of the Secret Voice at wholesale if you are a retailer, and there's also one with the same thing plus a bunch of excellent publications from Study Group Comics at probably close to like 80% off for those particular things. There is the sketch tier, which I call the Medici. As a great patron of the arts, you can get a copy of the book, the patch, plus a nice drawing. I give some examples there. So sort of like a figure drawing, or like if you're like, I really like Spider-Man, and I really want you to draw it. I guess I could draw Spider-Man or something, something like that. And then there's the original art tier, the Eldritch Patron. So for $150, you can get the book plus the patch and the PDF, but you can also pick a original art page from the book. Of your choice, at least, first comes, first serve on those. But yeah, so that's the basic deal. That's the deal.
So you have a lot of reward levels for people to choose from the book itself in various forms, to swag, to prints, to original art. So people should definitely go to Kickstarter and check out the Secret Voice Volume 1. And this is going to be going on until Wednesday, May 30th at 4:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So as people listen to this episode, they have plenty of time, although they shouldn't dither, kind of like you do in terms of your creation. They should just, immediately go to their web browser and check out Secret Voice Volume 1. And again, the deadline on that is May 30th at 4:05 p.m. Now, you've mentioned a couple of times, Zach, Study Group. Now, I'm familiar with Study Group Comics, and I'm a big fan of it. Now, you're the publisher and editor-in-chief of that. So describe to our audience what Study Group is.
Well, Study Group Comics is, that originally just came out of me wanting to sort of team up with all my friends who all had their own little amounts of, fandom or, followers or whatever, and put out a whole bunch of really cool web comics and hopefully print comics that would pool our resources, sort of, as it is. gang up together, making a stronger, like Voltron type, creating creative base. And so, yeah, so I like about 6 years ago, I started doing webcomics at studygroupcomics.com. And there's still hundreds and hundreds of pages, of free comics up on the web there. And then I've used those sort of as a way to point the arrow over to the print comics, and it's been pretty successful. I have recently sort of reassessed what I want to be doing in my life, and I'm still way happy to do the webcomic stuff, but I actually want to be a cartoonist, so I'm doing less and less of the print stuff, which is why I'm actually teaming up with Floating World Comics to put out this book. So once the Kickstarter is funded, fingers crossed, Floating World will actually be taking over the publishing side of things, doing all the stuff that I don't really love to do, like promotion and fulfillment and things like that. So.
And listeners can check out Study Group Comics by going to studygroupcomics.com, and that's one word, studygroupcomics.com. You're also a fellow podcaster.
This is true. I have joined the ranks in the last year or so.
Yes, the noble ranks of comics podcasters. So tell us about Process Party.
Yeah, my show is called Process Party, and it's ostensibly hosted at the Study Group Comics site. You can see a bunch of our sort of episode notes and whatnot, show notes over there. But yeah, it's me and my co-host Mike Dawson, who is a longtime podcaster. He used to do the Ink Panthers show, and he used to do a show called TCJ Talkies at the Comics Journal website. And he's an excellent interviewer. And we're both, working cartoonists, quote unquote, and we both sort of have slightly different, we're both basically coming from like the same kind of crew, but we both have pretty Catholic tastes as far as comics go. Like we read a lot of everything, and we try to talk to different creators every week. There's a couple, episodes here and there where it's just Mike and I talking about our comics or our life stories and things like that, things that we're interested in. But for the most part, every week we have an interview with a new creator, and it's all based on, like creative life, but specifically comics creation life.
And the best way for listeners to discover and listen to episodes of Process Party is either through the studygroupcomics.com website or through Apple Podcasts, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, you can search for it on any of it's on Stitcher, it's on iTunes, it's definitely available. It's called Process Party. I think it's also sort of branded as Study Group Radio, but I think Process Party, a search for Process Party should get you there for sure.
Yeah. And so definitely check it out. You mentioned your co-host, Mike Dawson. We had Mike on the Comics Alternative a while back when Rules for Dating My Daughter came out. So he's a great guy. And I highly recommend that listeners also check out Process Party, as well as checking out The Secret Voice Volume 1, which is currently being kickstarted. Yeah. Again, the deadline for this is Wednesday, May 30th at 4:05 p.m. So make sure you back it by that time.
Yeah, I did want to just I forgot to sort of mention the fact that I've got some all-star artists in the pinup section in the back of the book. I've got Michelle Fife, Farrell Dalrymple, Simon Roy, Sammy Harcum, and Francois Vigneault doing pinups in the book. And we are actually we've done very well in the first few days of our Kickstarter, but so we're getting close to funded. But I have several stretch goals, including the first one will be to make the book a hardcover, and then I have some sort of secret pie in the sky, very cool goals to hit if we can get past that.
I hope you can. I'm definitely back in the project, and I recommend that listeners do as well. So they can find this on Kickstarter or through a link through the Comics Alternative website. Zack, thanks a lot for talking about The Secret Voice Volume 1, and good luck with everything.
Thanks a lot, Derek.
And we will be back next week with another comics-related Kickstarter project. Until then, enjoy the weekend.